I heard a rumor that they're making a Leica M10 monochrome, and I'm glad to hear that because I'm definitely going to buy a black and white version of the M10. M10 by far is the best Leica camera they've ever made, but it has one really serious problem for me, and that is that the camera is sluggish. And sometimes I'll write that on a forum, I'll say how sluggish the camera is, and people go, what do you mean it's sluggish? The camera's not sluggish or whatever. It amazes me that people aren't seeing what I'm seeing. So we're gonna compare the Leica M10 to a 10-year-old Nikon D3s, 10 years old. And if you go back 10 years in terms of technology, that's like 30 years in anything else in your life. Like if you try to imagine what phone were you using in 2009, what did it look like? We probably didn't even have iPads in 2009. Instagram didn't exist. Facebook probably wasn't that big of a deal in our lives. I mean, the technology moves so quickly. 10-year-old camera, okay? So all we're gonna look at first is what happens if I try to just turn on the camera and take a picture. How long does it take? So here's the Leica. Okay, again. Second. I have to wait for it to really be off because it's not technically off. Okay. All right, so you can see it takes quite a while. Now watch the Nikon. No matter how fast I try with the Nikon, I can't not take a picture. It's impossible to turn this camera on and move your finger fast enough to not take a picture. If we watch the image review, we're just going to take a picture on each camera and look at how long it takes for the image review to pop up. Let me put this camera back to manual mode. I mean to single frame advance. Okay, so it's subtle, but you can see that the Nikon comes back quicker. And the other thing with the Leica is that this camera, if I let it sit like this for 2 hours, I can just walk up and take a picture instantly. This camera is going to go to sleep and whatever. I'm not even sure how long it is, probably about 5 or 10 minutes. And I'll have to wait again that 1 or 2 seconds before I can take a picture. It's a much slower camera than a Nikon. And I think we've gotten accustomed to mirrorless cameras, which technically this is a mirrorless camera. Mirrorless cameras being slower than a DSLR. And I think in our minds it's because the mirrorless is doing more things. It's a more complicated camera. But let's understand what we're talking about here. This camera just takes still photos. It doesn't do movies. The D3 actually shoots movies. So it is doing something much more complex than the M10 is doing. So for me, I can't understand why in 10 years, Leica can't get the M10 to work at the speed of a D3. So bottom line is, I am really hoping they are making a black and white version of the M10. I'll be the first one to buy it. But I hope that a lot of time is being put into making this camera more responsive and not just into increasing the megapixel count.